correct? Fantastic. Working on the slides. Okay, but the live stream can see me. Hello, live stream folks. Great to have you with us. 8th graders who are out in the other hallway, come back in. We need to start. All right, a couple of things before we jump into this, guys. What? We're not up? We're good. Oh, okay. Thought you were waving at me. All right. So a couple of substitutions tonight before we jump into things. Chad Wolf, where are you at here? Chad. There you are. There's Chad. Chad's going to be subbing for Todd again tonight. Thank you for doing that. And then Dave Wongard over here is going to be subbing for Larry Kent. Glad to have you with us as well. I think those are our only 2 substitutions tonight. So, as Vicar Jamie talked about during his sermon, tonight is our last actual lesson night, right? We've got all these lessons that we've been talking through the New Testament about. Tonight is the final one for this year, but there's a lot more that's going to be happening in confirmation. Confirmation is not done, right? Next week, special announcement for the small group leaders. Make sure that you bring a cell phone with you that can connect to the internet, because we're going to need a buzzer for your group for the game show we're going to be doing for our review. In 2 weeks, we're going to be sending you out with your confirmation tests on the New Testament. For those of you who were here last year, it's going to be kind of similar to that. You'll be able to take them home with you, work with whoever you want to with them. Really a low-stress type thing. I don't want this to be something that you're afraid of or nervous of. It's something that I want you to talk with your classmates with, your family with. Let's keep it really, really low stress for you on that piece. And you can talk to me about it. I'd love to talk the test about you. But we are going to be reviewing for that next week. And then also, after we take the test, we're going to be jumping into Lent. And at Calvary, that means we're going to be doing Lent mentoring. Now, for those of you who haven't been able to be a part of that program, which is most of you, because we haven't done it for a little bit because of the COVID, how that works is we pair each one of you up with another person, another adult in the Calvary community to kind of talk through some faith stuff. Vicar Jamie is going to be leading a sermon series throughout Lent, each Wednesday night, and each night there's going to be a series of conversation starter questions that we're going to have available to you and your mentor that after worship is done, instead of going with your small groups, you're going to get together with your mentor and just kind of talk through what the sermon was about, talk through what the scripture was, talk through any of the questions or whatever else that you want to discuss. And the goal for this is not just to talk with one person about what's happening during Lent. These are relationships that we're trying to build over the long term, right? So that your mentor that you have during Lent, especially those of you who are in 6th grade or 7th grade, we're wanting that to be probably the same mentor that sticks with you going forward for the rest of your confirmation journey and possibly beyond, having some opportunities to talk about faith with people who are not specifically your small group leaders or your parents. In the folders, small group leaders tonight, you'll find not only your sheets for the lesson, but also a half sheet where every confirmation student can write down who they want their mentors to be. We have on the back a spot for you to fill out 5 different names. And again, we want that to be someone in the Calvary community or connected with the Calvary community in some way. An adult, hopefully, preferably. Guys pick guys, girls pick girls. Don't pick someone who's in your family. Don't pick one of the Calvary pastors, and preferably don't pick your own small group leader. If you know somebody else, that would be a great name to put on there. We're not always able to match you up with someone on your list, but we will try very hard to do so. Before you leave tonight, confirmation students, please try to fill out that back sheet with as many names as you can think of people that you know who might be good mentors for you. Maybe someone that your parents know, someone that you know, someone that you're aware of in the Calvary community. For those of you who are watching at home, this half sheet will be emailed to you so that we can get you guys connected up as well. For folks that are doing independent study at home, again, your family units will also be your mentor units for that piece. I think that's it for this. If you have more questions about that, I'll be around. We can talk through some of that stuff, but I do want to make sure to turn it over to Vicar Jamie for the lesson tonight. So, you're on.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So if y'all remember last time that I led a confirmation lesson, I told you all that I was running around all day and I shared a practice that I like to do of taking a deep breath to get myself centered. And tonight feels like another night where that would be a good way to get started. So especially with the subject material we're going to be talking about. So I invite you all to take a second, close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and a deep breath out. All right. Yeah, that sounds like a good breath. All right. So kicking things off, I have a question for all of you. What do horned beasts, seven-headed dragons, and supernatural horsemen all have in common? It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it. My answer, though, is that they are all both subjects of many of my nightmares and visions that are highlighted in the book of Revelation, which we will be talking about tonight. Now, can anyone tell me which book of the Bible Revelation is? Where does it fall in the New Testament? First hand I saw. It is the last book of the New Testament. And that is very fitting because the book, at least on a surface level as you read through it, is very focused with the end times. And indeed, it is both the last book of the New Testament and also one of the most misinterpreted books of the New Testament. So tonight we're going to take a little bit of time to dive into what does the book of Revelation say, how has it been explained in the past, and what's a way that we can look at it today and bring it into our own faith. So before we do that, does anyone know what the word revelation means? Yeah? The end? Good guess. Good guess. Yeah? Revolution. Does sound like revolution, yeah? What's that? Resolution? A little bit, yeah. What about if we break down the word a little bit more? The first part of revelation is reveal. What does it mean to reveal something? Show something that was hidden, yeah. So the word revelation, pretty much spot on right there, means showing of something that was hidden, to reveal, to have an epiphany, or to notice something. And that's what the book of Revelation is centered on. It's important to note that the title of the book is Revelation, singular, not Revelations with an S. If you were here for my sermon, I doubled down on that quite hard. Because the book is about a revelation, a revealing to this guy named John, that handsome dude on the screen right there. And John lived in around the year 96 during a time when the Roman Empire was persecuting Christians, all right? They were harming them, exiling them, all because they worshiped Jesus instead of the emperor. And John was one of those people who was exiled. He was kicked away from his home and sent to this island to be by himself. And while he's on the island, he has a series of visions that feature some of those images we looked at the beginning. There's scary things in the book, dragons and beasts and destruction. It's very frightening. And all of these things were seen by John in his visions. So the challenging thing about approaching the book of Revelation is we have to decide when we read it whether we read it literally or metaphorically. If we do read the book literally, it becomes a prediction about the way the world is going to end. As I mentioned in my sermon, how many of you remember 10 years ago, the year 2012? How old would you have been in 2012? Pretty young. I sometimes forget how old I'm getting. But in that year, And in some other years, there were predictions that people were making that the world was going to end. And a lot of times they based those predictions on things in the book of Revelation, these signs that things are coming to an end. The book talks about all these things. It talks about these seals being open, people being taken up to heaven, chaos happening on earth, and all these images that we talked about earlier, that some people interpret to say that that's how the world is going to end one day. How many of you have heard the number 666 before? Does that sound familiar? Yeah. In Revelation, that number, that's where it is originated. Not the number itself, obviously, but the meaning we put behind the number as something evil or scary. It's a number that symbolizes a beast who's the enemy of God. All right, this frightening imagery, these words and numbers that are meant to scare us, right? And Revelation also speaks of this event called Armageddon, all right? Which is, yes, a movie from 1998 starring Bruce Willis. That's fun for the adults. But it is also a place where a final battle is set to take place. This location in Israel that the book of Revelation says will be the site of this holy battle, this big event that's set to end the world, this battle between good and evil, Jesus and Satan, angels and devils. All right, and do we have a question? Yeah. Does anyone live there? That's a good question. Do you know Jeremiah? City of Megiddo? I'm not sure. Yeah. Probably. What's that? Yeah, they would be the first one, so it might be a little bit sketchy for them. But it's this real place, right, that's said to be the site of these end-time events. So, there's a lot of really frightening and scary things throughout the book of Revelation. And if you think about it as these visions that guy John had, you can imagine that he was pretty scared seeing all these things that I said I see in my nightmares sometimes, right? And when we interpret the book literally, with these visions being signs of actual things that are coming, then the purpose of Revelation becomes trying to avoid these things, right? It's kind of like what Jeremiah talked about last week in his lesson about a faith based on fear rather than a faith based on love. The book of Revelation and all these scary things can be used to bring about fear and to make us afraid and to bring us to God based on fear. And if you remember from last week, is that something that God wants from us, to have a relationship based on fear? No. What kind of relationship does God want with us? Love. A relationship based on love. So what if instead of looking at the book of Revelation as this literal collection of things that are going to happen, we look at it a different way? And to do that, we refer to our focus verses for tonight, Revelation 21, 3 through 4. And they say, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, see, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. Does that sound scary? Yeah? No, I don't think so. I think that sounds hopeful. And that's the other side of the book of Revelation, not just this collection of scary images, but a word of hope as well. Yeah. Yeah, the promises of heaven that Jesus gives us as well, this hope as well. So the book of Revelation isn't just a collection of scary images, it's also a word of hope that death will be no more, that crying and pain will be no more, and that God is making something new. So instead of looking at it literally, some people have decided that maybe the book is metaphorical. Do you all know what a metaphor is? No? A metaphor is something that is used to describe something else. That's a simile. Like or as is a simile. So people believe that these visions that John had in the book of Revelation were metaphors that were used to describe things that were going on in the time. And ultimately, all of those evil things, those scary things that John sees, are defeated. And God reigns supreme over all of them and provides this word of hope that conquers fear. So ultimately, the book of Revelation is an invitation to have what some people may know as faith over fear. Have you heard that statement before? Yeah. You have heard that before? Yeah. But I think that there's a better way that we can use this term that's a little bit more realistic for us, because I realize in myself, no matter how much faith I have, sometimes I'm still scared, right? Sometimes I still think about dragons and monsters and all of those evil things and get afraid, no matter how much faith that I have. So I think a better way to look at it, and what the book of Revelation really gives to us, is faith in the midst of fear. This promise that God has to be with us when we're afraid, and the promise that eventually, in God's time, not a time that any of us can predict, that all of those scary things will pass away. And as Revelation 21 says, mourning and pain and death will be no more, and God will bring about something new. So in your small groups tonight, you'll have an opportunity to explore more in depth some parts of Revelation, to talk a little bit more about what the purpose of the book may be and who John, the author, was writing to, and to talk about some of the things that might be scary and how you can find hope and faith even in fearful times. So with that, I invite you to go off and be with your small groups and talk about this more. And thank you for listening and spending some time tonight, and have a great rest of your night.
Small group leaders, please make sure that once you get those mentorship sheets filled out, that you bring them to us in the office at the end. Thank you.